Melbourne, Australia's Joe Siracusa, an author and professor of security and diplomacy at Curtin University. Joe, welcome to the program. From a security point of view, this disbursement of that large, long convoy that has been heading from the north towards Kiev, do you think it's going the way the Russians were planning? Is it a concerted effort to go slowly and encircle the capital?
Well, I'm sure that was the plan, but look, in wartime, nothing goes according to plan. But I'm sure the Russians will put a stranglehold on Kyiv sooner or later, and that no war, whether it's international or otherwise, has ever been concluded without some form of diplomacy. So I think the sooner we get to the diplomatic table, the better.
Well, I mean, there's been one significant development, of course, and that was in Antalya here in Turkey 24 hours ago, and it failed to find a breakthrough. It seems that, according to the Ukrainians at least, the Russians came to the table without any real goodwill to actually find any sort of peace. Because if Sergei Lavrov is telling Dmytro Kuleba, you guys need to lay down your weapons, you need to become a neutral country, it's not really a starting point, is it?
Well, I think it's amazing that the Turkish government has that kind of influence to get the Russian foreign minister and the Ukraine foreign minister in the third week of a war to come and sit across the table. I mean, I'm sure not much was accomplished. The Russians want too much, and so do the Ukrainians right now. But I think it's a pretty good start. I mean, Putin has overestimated what he thought he could do, and now the Ukrainians might be overestimating about the resistance. One side wants a surrender, the other side wants a ceasefire. But I think that the fact that President Erdogan is able to get these people in a single place sort of foreshadows a major diplomatic effort down the road, so that he will broker a deal between the president of Russia and the president of Ukraine. I think it's an enormously important first step. Sure, it doesn't look like much, but I'll tell you what, the fact that they're in the same room talking to each other at this time in the war as things are deteriorating, I think is a significant step.
Sure. I just thought it was also significant that Kuleba said that he directly spoke to Lavrov and said, I can pick up the phone right now and can guarantee that Ukraine will make sure that the humanitarian corridors are effective and there'll be no fighting there. Can you do the same? And Lavrov couldn't do that. So where does this go from here in terms of how outside influencers can have an impact on what's happening inside Ukraine? We had 24 hours ago, again, the British government sanctioning 7 more Russian oligarchs. When you put their money together, you're talking about tens of billions of dollars. How effective is that kind of action to sanction individuals who don't necessarily spend most of their time in Russia anyway?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that all these sanctions are going to have the impact that they think they do. And some of these sanctions just aren't fair. I mean, I think people can't get McDonald's in Moscow, and they can't even pay for it with their Diners Club card. I mean, some of this is getting a little crazy. Look, it can put enormous pressure on Russia, and it won't affect anybody in the Kremlin. It certainly won't affect Vladimir Putin in his lifetime. So you wonder what this is all about. But I think the position on the battlefield is more important right now than the sanctions. I mean, I think the Ukrainians have fought bravely, and I think that honor has been served. And I think sooner or later this is going to have to come to an end. And I think the channels right now are open, particularly through the Turkish president, to bring it to an end. Look, you can't ask people to die forever in the conflict. You're going to have to call it off sooner or later. And Zelensky will probably wind up in the United States or the UK or Warsaw or wherever he's in exile. I mean, he can't afford to be caught, as a matter of fact. But look, I think it's the battlefield will determine what happens. I remember all this during the Vietnam War about the final positioning before they sat down in Paris. I mean, it was the last battle that determined what you got in your agreement. And quite clearly here, the Ukrainians are going to have to declare their neutrality. They're going to have to give up on Donbass, and then they're going to have to officially forfeit on Crimea. Those are the 3 basic terms. And I think by the end of the day, I think Putin will be lucky to get these kinds of things. They say he he overestimated the Russian forces and what they can do. He only brought with him 150 to 200,000 troops, and that's not enough to occupy an entire country. I like to say you can't even occupy Chicago with 150,000 troops. So he didn't have what he wanted there, but he had enough to cause a great deal of damage. And I think what he thought was that the Ukrainians would cave on him. They didn't cave on him. They fought back, and he should have known that. A lot of people in the Kremlin should have known that. So I think right now both armies are going to try to get the best position they can before they sit down. And I think the Turkish initiative, I think, is a brilliant possibility here, more so than anybody else. And that's because the Chinese are perfectly placed to broker this ceasefire, but they won't. They don't want to upset their Russian friends or whatever. And so Turkey becomes the second likely honest broker here. And of course, they have a lot at stake. You know, the tourist dollars will come back, and Turkey will do whatever it can to prevent the Black Sea from turning into a battlefield, and it will be terribly positioned well in Washington. I mean, the fact that President Biden is leaning on the Turks to solve this problem gives you an idea of the status of Turkey in Washington these days. And here it is, a NATO power which condemns Russia's invasion into Ukraine, and yet the Russians have acceded to having a diplomatic meeting of the highest order on Turkish soil. That's a big deal for Turkish diplomacy, no matter who wins or loses this.
Joe, thank you very much indeed. Always appreciated. Joe Siracusa in Melbourne.